So once again, education is more important than before, but as you can see, there's different types of education. There's traditional education on one side and financial education on the other side. Well, the same is true with learning. There's more than one side. And back in 1969, educational psychologist Dr. Edward Dale, again in 1969, created this thing here called the cone of learning. And on the cone of learning, you'll find out there's more than one way to learn. When we look at the bottom of the cone here, what you'll find, there's two ways of learning. There's reading and then listening to words or listening to lecture. This is my poor dad's way of learning. To me, as a kid, it was boring, boring, boring. At the other end of the cone of learning, you'll find the best way to learn is to do the real thing, but just below that is a thing called simulation. Simulation is another word for games or practice or simulating doing the real thing. So at the top of the cone was the way my rich dad taught me. At the bottom of the cone is where traditional education or my poor dad tried to teach me. So what Edgar Dale, again, Dr. Dale in 1969, educational psychologist, found out that reading, you retain the least, less than 10%. And then when you listen to lecture, it's about 20%. So that's why in school, so much of the time is I would attend class and listen to the lecture and forget everything. So once again, it's more than two ways to learn. At the bottom, these are the A students. And a lot of times at the top, these are the C students or D students. How many of you have met people who are really smart in school, but they can't do the real thing? And that's one of the problems I had with traditional education. They give you all the answers, but these people aren't that bright. They don't know what to do. They can't do much. They're afraid of making mistakes. So that's the bottom of the learning curve that Dr. Edgar Dale found out, and the top. Now you move up to the next level. The next level is looking at pictures. And one of the reasons I did Second Chance in so many pictures is to improve your retention, to improve your learning, and that's up to about 30%. Now moving above that is you watch a movie. And this video, this movie called The Man Who Could Predict the Future is, again, we did it just to increase your retention, so you remember more and forget less. So moving up the cone of learning, you have this thing called participating in a discussion. And that's really high up there. And the reason we have Rich Dad Radio, the bug, so you can go inside Second Chance, is you can participate by dropping in and listening to discussions from real people who are doing what they talk about, who know what they're talking about. And up at 90% is a thing called simulation. And that's where games come from. The reason I learned so much from my rich dad was because my rich dad used a game of Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. I retained a lot. I learned a lot. And then rich dad would coach me and talk to me and educate me about how to do the real thing. So that I hear many people say, oh, it's so risky. What you do is so risky. Oftentimes, those are the people who, like my poor dad, they did well in school, a lot of times A students, many times accountants and attorneys and doctors, but they've only learned how to learn from reading and from lecture. And when it comes up to this level here, which is practice in the simulation, playing the game, and then doing the real thing, then they say it's risky. And it is risky if you've been taught not to simulate, not to practice. You see, the way we as humans are designed to learn is by making mistakes. For example, a baby learns to walk by standing up, falling down, standing up, falling down. Then after they learn how to walk, then they learn to run. Then they get on a bicycle, and again, they fall off, stand up, fall off, and then they learn how to ride. But our school system, especially down at the base level here, the reading and lecture, is if you make a mistake, they punish you. They always punish you for making a mistake. That's why so many of these really smart people can't do anything, because this is what Edgar Dale is talking about. It's simulation and then doing the real thing. So what I suggest is you read this book, listen to some of the lectures, watch this video in entirety, discuss it, participate in it, listen to what the experts are saying, And then you may want to play either Monopoly or the game Cash Flow and play it and play it and play it again until it sinks into your head. And then you do the real thing. That's what I suggest. But if you're afraid of making mistakes, which is what these people like my poor dad are, what if I make a mistake? If I make a mistake, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. Well, that's what's wrong with the school system. That's what's wrong with traditional education. They punish you for making mistakes. Now you look at it this way, I love flight school. I love learning to be a pilot and getting ready to go to Vietnam. The reason I like flight school at Pensacola, Florida and Camp Pendleton, California was because we simulated in preparation to doing the real thing. So this is what flight school looked like. We'd go to school in the morning, we'd listen to real instructors lecture us, then we'd fly in the afternoon. So study in the morning, fly in the afternoon, and then we did the real thing in Vietnam. Now, one of the things we practiced was crashing. It seems strange to people, but we as Marine pilots practice crashing, practice emergency, crashing, emergency, emergency, emergency. So when the real thing happened, when I was in Vietnam, I went down 3 times, and this is what a picture of a helicopter gunship looks like going into the water. When it happened, it was frightening, but we knew what to do. We were not killed because the Marine Corps and Navy flight school teaches us to practice, 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 crashing, crashing, crashing. And that's what you'll learn in Monopoly or the Cash Flow game by listening to our coaches or listening to the radio show or listening to real instructors who are doing the real thing. Then you're ready to do the real thing. So is investing risky? Is starting your own business risky? Yes. But what is worse is by just knowing the answers and reading books and not knowing how to do the real thing. So the purpose of Rich Dad was we want you to simulate, practice, and learn. You know, today I'm reading constantly, and I'm going to classes constantly, and I'm also practicing, making my mistakes, learning from my mistakes, and doing the real thing. That's the way humans are designed to learn. The trouble is our government and our economy and many of our businesses are run by people who only know how to read and only learn by lecture. And that's why we're in severe financial trouble today. So once again, education has more than one side. It is important you read, but as well as you practice and do the real thing, because that's where real learning takes place.